Captain Marcus Chen had seen enough alien worlds to know when something felt wrong. The crimson sky of Xerion 7 stretched endlessly above him as his boots crunched through crystalline sand that sparkled like crushed diamonds. His team of 12 soldiers spread out behind him, their plasma rifles ready, scanning the horizon for any sign of the missing research colony. 3 months ago, Colony Outpost 7 had gone completely silent. No distress calls, no emergency beacons, nothing. Just empty space where regular communication should have been. The Galactic Defense Force had sent Chen's elite unit to investigate what they assumed would be another pirate raid or equipment failure. What they found instead defied every protocol in their handbook. The colony building stood intact, gleaming white structures that looked untouched by violence. No scorch marks from weapons fire, no signs of struggle, no bodies, but also no people. 237 colonists had simply vanished without a trace. The only clue was a series of strange energy readings emanating from the planet's core. Readings that made their scanners go haywire and their equipment malfunction in ways Chen had never seen before. "Sir, you need to see this," called Sergeant Riley from inside the main habitat dome. Her voice carried a tremor that Chen had never heard from his veteran soldier. He jogged across the courtyard, his heavy combat boots echoing against the metallic walkways. Inside the dome, Riley stood before a massive wall covered in symbols that definitely hadn't been there in any of the colony reports. The markings seemed to pulse with their own inner light, shifting and changing even as Chen watched. They weren't carved into the wall. They appeared to be growing from it, like living things that used the metal itself as soil. "These weren't here when the colonists first arrived," Chen muttered, running his gloved hand near the symbols without quite touching them. The air around them felt warm, almost electric. "And they're not in any language database we have." Private Jackson, their communications expert, looked up from his scanning equipment with confusion written across his young face. "Captain, I'm picking up some kind of transmission coming from these symbols. It's not radio waves or any energy signature we recognize. It's almost like they're trying to communicate directly with our brains." Before Chen could respond, the symbols suddenly flared brighter. The entire dome filled with a harmonious sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It wasn't quite music, but it wasn't random noise either. There was a pattern to it, a rhythm that made Chen's heart beat faster and his thoughts clearer somehow. Then the voice came. Not through their comm systems, not through the air, but directly into their minds. It was unmistakably feminine, speaking perfect Earth-standard English despite clearly not being human in origin. "Welcome, travelers from the third planet of the Yellow Star. We have been waiting for you for so very long." Chen's team instantly raised their weapons, forming a defensive circle even though there was nothing visible to aim at. Training kicked in as they scanned for threats, but their enemy was apparently incorporeal. "I am Zephyra, Queen of the Vilthani Empire, ruler of 700 worlds across this galaxy's spiral arm. Your people interest me greatly. You are the first species we have encountered that burns with such fierce determination, such beautiful stubbornness in the face of impossible odds." The voice paused, and Chen could almost feel a presence examining them, studying them like specimens under a microscope. It wasn't entirely unpleasant, but it was deeply unsettling. "Your colonists are safe and unharmed. They have become my guests while I learned about your species. Through them, I have discovered something remarkable about humanity that even you do not fully understand about yourselves." Chen found his voice, though speaking to empty air felt ridiculous. "Where are they?"
"What do you want with us?"
A sound like gentle laughter filled their minds, direct and demanding even when completely outmatched. How perfectly human. "Your people possess something we have searched for across millennia, something that could change the fate of every sentient species in this galaxy. You call it stubbornness, but we recognize it as the rarest form of spiritual strength." The symbols on the wall began to move faster, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. The air itself seemed to shimmer as reality bent around them. "I am extending to you an invitation that has never been offered to any species before. Come to my flagship, meet with me face to face, learn what your people truly are and what they could become with the right guidance. Your colonists will be returned to you regardless of your decision, but humanity's future hangs in the balance of what happens next." Chen felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. Whatever this Zephyra was, she commanded technology beyond human understanding and claimed to rule hundreds of worlds. One wrong move could mean not just the death of his team, but potentially the end of human expansion into space. But humans hadn't conquered half their home system by playing it safe. They'd done it by walking straight into danger with their eyes wide open and their weapons ready. Coordinates are being transmitted to your ship's navigation system, Zephyr's voice continued. You have one of your hours to decide. Choose wisely, Captain Chen. The future of both our species depends on what happens when we finally meet. The presence withdrew as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving only the fading glow of the symbols and the sound of Chen's team breathing heavily in the sudden silence. Outside the dome, their ship's communication array crackled to life with an incoming message containing star charts to a location deeper in the system. Chen looked at his team, seeing his own mix of fear and curiosity reflected in their faces. Whatever they were walking into, it was bigger than a simple rescue mission. Much bigger. The coordinates led them to a region of space that shouldn't have existed according to every star chart in their database, where empty void should have stretched between Zarian 7th and its neighboring moon. They found something that made their ship's sensors scream warnings and their pilot curse in 3 different languages. A structure hung in the darkness that was less spaceship and more floating city. Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, staring through the reinforced viewports at something that challenged every assumption humans had about space travel and engineering. The alien vessel stretched for dozens of kilometers in every direction. Its surface a flowing mixture of what looked like liquid metal and crystalline formations that pulsed with soft, bioluminescent light. Captain, I'm reading power signatures that are off the charts, reported Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. Whatever's generating their energy, it's producing more power than our entire home fleet combined. And sir, there are definitely life signs aboard. Thousands of them, Chen nodded grimly. He'd made his decision back on the planet's surface, but seeing the sheer scale of what they were dealing with made him question his sanity. Still, the missing colonists were somewhere on that ship and he'd never left people behind before. He wasn't about to start now. Engineering, how are our weapon systems? Chief Engineer Walsh's voice crackled over the comm with barely contained nervousness. All systems operational, sir, but against something that size? We'd be like a mosquito attacking a battleship. Our entire missile payload might not even scratch their hull. Understood, but keep everything ready just in case. Comms, send a message to command. Full situation report on our current location. If this goes sideways, they need to know what happened to us. The response came faster than Chen expected. Not through their communication systems, but directly into his mind again, though this time the touch was gentler, almost respectful. Captain Chen, please dock with the bay opening on our starboard hull section. Your ship will be safely secured, and you have my word that no harm will come to any of your crew members. Bring whatever weapons give you comfort. I understand that humans feel more confident when armed. Despite himself, Chen almost smiled. The alien queen seemed to understand human psychology better than some humans did. The docking process felt surreal. Their ship, which had seemed impressively large when they'd launched from Earth, looked like a child's toy as it was gently guided into a hangar bay that could have housed a dozen vessels their size. The moment their airlocks connected, Chen's instruments detected a perfect atmospheric mixture waiting for them on the other side. Chen chose 6 of his best soldiers to accompany him, leaving the rest aboard the Defiance with strict orders to maintain communication and be ready for immediate departure. As they stepped through the airlock, he expected to find typical sterile corridors like those on human ships. Instead, they entered what could only be described as a garden. Living walls of flowering vines stretched up to a ceiling that seemed to contain actual sky, complete with slowly drifting clouds. The floor beneath their feet felt like soft earth covered with moss that glowed faintly with each step. Streams of crystal-clear water meandered alongside pathways that seemed to have grown naturally, rather than being constructed. This is impossible, whispered Private Martinez, their botanist and environmental specialist. These plants are from at least 40 different worlds. The atmospheric requirements alone should make them incompatible, but they're thriving together. Their guide appeared without warning, materializing from what Chen could have sworn was empty air. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that seemed to contain swirling galaxies of silver and blue. Her features were distinctly humanoid but refined beyond human possibility, as if someone had taken the concept of feminine beauty and perfected it through advanced genetic engineering. Most striking were her eyes, which held depths that suggested intelligence far beyond human comprehension. I am Lyra, first advisor to Queen Zephyra, she said. her voice carrying the same mental component they'd experienced before, though now it felt natural rather than intrusive. "The Queen awaits you in the heart chamber. Please follow me and do not fear. You are honored guests here." As they walked deeper into the ship, Chen began to understand that this wasn't just a vessel, it was a living ecosystem. Creatures that looked like crystalline birds flitted between the branches overhead, their songs creating harmonies that seemed to resonate in his bones. Small furry animals that might have been the galaxy's most adorable predators watched them curiously from hidden alcoves before scampering away on silent paws. "How long have you been watching humanity?" Chen asked as they walked. Lyra's expression grew thoughtful. "We first detected your species when you achieved nuclear capability. Such destructive potential combined with such fierce determination to explore and expand caught our attention. Most species either destroy themselves at that stage or become so cautious that they never leave their home systems. Humans chose a third path, carefully controlled destruction in service of unstoppable exploration. They passed through chambers that defied physics, where water flowed upward in spirals and plants grew in impossible geometries. Chen's team documented everything with their suit cameras, though he doubted anyone back on Earth would believe the footage. "Your colonists are quite remarkable," Lyra continued. Despite being completely out of their element and surrounded by technology they couldn't understand, they never stopped trying to find ways to improve their situation. "Dr. Sarah Wong has already suggested 17 modifications to our environmental systems that we hadn't considered in 3,000 years of engineering." "That sounds like Sarah," Chen replied with a mixture of pride and exasperation. "She once redesigned our entire water recycling system during a 3-day asteroid storm because she was bored." They arrived at a massive door that seemed to be made of flowing starlight held in a solid form. As they approached, it dissolved away like morning mist, revealing a chamber beyond that took Chen's breath away. The heart chamber was a sphere perhaps 50 meters in diameter, its walls transparent and revealing the cosmos beyond. Stars wheeled slowly around them as the ship rotated, creating a sensation of floating free in space itself. In the center of the sphere, suspended in midair by some invisible force, sat a throne that looked like it had been carved from a single massive crystal, and on that throne sat the most beautiful and terrifying being Chen had ever encountered, Queen. Zephyra was clearly of the same species as Lyra, but where the advisor radiated calm competence, the Queen commanded attention like a force of nature. Her presence filled the chamber despite her relatively small size, and when she looked at Chen, he felt like she was reading the entire history of his species in his eyes. "Welcome, Captain Marcus Chen of Earth," she said, rising gracefully from her throne and approaching them with movements that seemed to defy gravity. "At last I found you." Queen Zephyra moved with the fluid grace of someone who had never known physical limitations. As she approached, Chen noticed that her feet didn't quite touch the crystalline floor. She glided just slightly above it, leaving faint trails of luminescent energy in her wake. Her gaze fixed on him with an intensity that made his trained soldier's instincts scream warnings, but something deeper than training told him this being meant no harm. "You're wondering why I said at last? I've found you," she said, her mental voice carrying layers of emotion that human speech couldn't convey. "The answer will change how your species sees itself forever." She gestured toward the transparent walls surrounding them, and the starscape beyond began to shift and change. Instead of the slowly rotating view of space, images formed in the cosmic backdrop, scenes of worlds and civilizations that Chen had never imagined. "Across this galaxy, we have encountered over 3,000 intelligent species," Zephyra began, her voice taking on the cadence of someone sharing a profound truth. "Each unique, each beautiful in their own way, but also each limited by fundamental aspects of their nature that they cannot overcome." The images showed magnificent cities floating in gas-giant atmospheres, crystal beings who thought in mathematical harmonies, and countless others that challenged every assumption about life in the universe. The Cathara achieve perfect logical thinking, but cannot innovate beyond their programming. The Morvani feel emotions so deeply they create art that moves the soul, but they cannot make the hard choices needed for survival. The Zen3 master technology beyond imagining, but they lack the drive to explore or expand. Every species excels in some areas while being blind to others. Chen watched in fascination as the images shifted to show the rise and fall of civilizations. Some destroyed themselves in wars that lasted millennia, Others simply stagnated, achieving perfection in narrow fields while failing to grow beyond their limitations. For 5,000 of your years, we have been searching for something that we believed might not exist, a species that combines the best traits of all others while maintaining the ability to grow beyond their current limitations. We called this theoretical species the catalyst race. The images in the walls shifted again, now showing scenes that Chen recognized. Earth's cities, human ships launching toward the stars, colonies spreading across multiple worlds. But these weren't views from human cameras. Someone had been watching and recording from the beginning. Humans possess something we have seen in no other species, Zephyra continued, her excitement becoming palpable even through their mental connection. You combine Kitharan logic with Morvani emotion. You match Zen3 technological adaptation, while exceeding even our own drive for exploration. But most importantly, you never accept limitations as permanent. Sergeant Riley stepped forward slightly, her tactical mind clearly working through implications. You're saying we're some kind of genetic anomaly. Zephyra's expression softened, and for the first time she smiled. An expression that somehow managed to be both alien and completely familiar. Not genetic, Sergeant, spiritual. Your species possesses what we call the endless spirit, the absolute refusal to accept that any problem is unsolvable, any goal unreachable, any barrier permanent. She moved to stand before a section of wall that showed scenes of human history. Explorers crossing frozen oceans, scientists splitting atoms, engineers building impossible structures, ordinary people doing extraordinary things when circumstances demanded it. Watch your own history, Captain. Every time humans encounter something that should defeat them, they find a way around, through, or over it. Other species adapt to their environment. Humans adapt their environment to suit them. Other species accept their physical limitations. Humans build tools to transcend them. Other species bow to forces beyond their control. Humans study those forces until they understand how to control them instead. Chen felt his worldview shifting as he processed what she was telling them. You're saying humanity is special, but why? How did we develop these traits when other species didn't? Your planet is uniquely hostile, Zephyra replied. And the walls now showed Earth from space. Beautiful, but clearly dangerous. Most intelligent life develops on worlds that support them easily. Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill them in 1,000 different ways. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, meteors, predators, diseases, natural disasters that would have eliminated weaker species entirely. The images shifted to show other worlds, peaceful planets with stable climates and abundant resources where civilization had grown slowly and safely. Species that develop in comfort become comfortable. They solve immediate problems and then rest in their success. Humans never had the luxury of rest. Your planet forced you to keep growing, keep adapting, keep pushing beyond what seemed possible. This created what we call the endless spirit. Private Jackson, their youngest team member, spoke up with the curiosity that had made him an excellent communications officer. But if we're so special, why do you need us? Your technology is centuries ahead of ours. Zephyra turned to him with an expression of deep sadness. Because, young human, we have a problem that all our advancement cannot solve. Our empire spans 700 worlds, but it is slowly dying. The walls around them shifted to show the vast scope of the Velthani Empire. Hundreds of star systems connected by streams of energy. Massive space stations that dwarfed anything humans had built. Worlds transformed into gardens that supported billions of beings. We achieved peace through strength, prosperity through technology, and harmony through understanding. We eliminated war, poverty, disease, and suffering across our domain. And in doing so, we eliminated the challenges that drive growth. The images now showed the current state of Velthani worlds. Still beautiful, still advanced, but somehow static. Cities that hadn't changed in millennia. Technology that had plateaued. Art that had become repetitive. We have become too perfect, too comfortable. Our people no longer strive because there is nothing left to strive for. Our scientists no longer innovate because all obvious problems have been solved. Our explorers no longer explore because we have mapped everything within reach. Chen began to understand the magnitude of what he was hearing. You're stagnating. Your entire civilization is slowly grinding to a halt because you've eliminated all the challenges that used to drive you forward. Precisely. And now we face a threat that our perfection cannot handle. The walls darkened. showing space that seemed somehow wrong, regions where stars had gone out and galaxies had begun to fade. Beyond the edge of our mapped space, something is consuming entire star systems, not destroying them, consuming them, converting all matter and energy to something else entirely. It moves slowly but inevitably toward the galactic core. All our calculations suggest it will reach our core worlds within 2,000 of your years. Our response has been typical of our nature: careful study, measured planning, gradual preparation. But the consumed regions resist all our attempts at understanding. We need something we have forgotten how to be. Zephyra moved closer to Chen, and he could feel the weight of desperate hope in her presence. We need the endless spirit. We need beings who look at impossible problems and immediately start searching for solutions, instead of reasons why solutions can't exist. We need humans. The chamber fell silent except for the soft harmonics that seemed to emanate from the ship's living walls. Chen processed what Queen Zephyra had told them, his mind racing through implications and possibilities. His team stood ready behind him, their weapons lowered but their alertness undiminished. They were soldiers, but they were also humans, and the challenge she'd presented called to something deeper than military training. "You want us to solve a problem that your entire advanced civilization can't handle," Chen said carefully. "A threat that's consuming star systems and moving toward the galactic core. With respect, Your Majesty, we're barely capable of interstellar travel. How could we possibly help with something of that magnitude?" Zephyra's expression shifted to something that might have been amusement in a human. "You're already doing it, Captain. You're asking the right questions." A Valthani would have immediately begun calculating resource requirements and technological limitations. A Cathera would have started analyzing probability matrices. A Morvani would have composed a song about the cosmic sadness of inevitable defeat. She gestured, and the walls around them displayed a complex three-dimensional map of local space. Hundreds of star systems were marked in different colors with connecting lines showing trade routes, communication networks, and defensive positions. But you asked how you could help. Not whether it was possible, not what the odds were, not whether you were qualified. You immediately started looking for ways to make it work. That is the endless spirit in action. The map zoomed in on a region at the edge of Valthani space, where several star systems were marked in ominous red. "Your colonists have been working with our scientists for the past 3 months," Zephyra continued. "We presented them with the same information I've just shared with you. Would you like to see their response?" Without waiting for an answer, she activated some kind of holographic display that showed a large conference room filled with humans and Valthani working side by side. Chen immediately recognized Dr. Sarah Wong, the colony's chief scientist, gesturing enthusiastically at a projection, while several tall aliens listened with what appeared to be fascination. "Dr. Wong, what's your assessment of the situation?" came Zephyra's voice through the recording. "Well, it's obviously a problem," Sarah replied with the same matter-of-fact tone she'd used when discussing broken water recyclers. "But problems exist to be solved. The fact that you can't understand what's happening just means you need a different approach." Chen couldn't help but smile. That was definitely Sarah. "We've been thinking about this wrong," Sarah continued, now addressing the mixed group of humans and aliens. "Everyone's trying to figure out what this thing is so they can fight it or negotiate with it. But what if it's not intelligent? What if it's just a natural phenomenon that nobody's seen before?" One of the Valthani scientists, distinguished by elaborate crystalline ornaments, spoke up. "Our analysis indicates energy signatures consistent with directed intelligence." "Your analysis is based on comparing it to known intelligence patterns," interrupted colonial engineer Tom Bradley, a gruff man who'd spent 40 years making impossible things work in impossible places. "But what if it thinks in ways you've never encountered? Hell, what if it doesn't think at all? What if it's just following some kind of programming or natural law we don't understand yet?" The recording showed the next several hours in compressed time, humans and Valthani brainstorming solutions with an energy that clearly surprised their hosts. Instead of accepting the problem as given, the humans had immediately started questioning assumptions, proposing experiments, and suggesting approaches that their alien colleagues had never considered. "Your people spent 3 days completely restructuring our understanding of the threat," Zephyra said as the recording ended. "Not because they had superior knowledge or technology, but because they refused to accept our limitations as absolute." She waved her hand, and the chamber's walls returned to showing the starscape beyond. This leads us to the test, Captain Chen. The word test made every soldier in his team tense slightly. Chen had been expecting this moment since they'd first boarded the alien ship. We need to know if the endless spirit can be shared, Zephyra continued. If humans can teach other species to think beyond their limitations, if your approach can be integrated with our knowledge and resources to create something greater than either could achieve alone. What kind of test? Chen asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. A practical one. We have prepared a scenario based on real situations our empire has faced. You and your team will work with a group of our people to solve a crisis that defeated several of our most capable response teams. But there are constraints. The chamber around them began to shift, walls flowing like liquid to reconfigure the space. When the transformation completed, they found themselves in what looked like a military command center, complete with holographic displays, communication arrays, and tactical planning stations. You will have access to all of our technology and databases, but your team must take the lead in developing solutions. Our people will provide information and support, but they have been instructed not to offer suggestions unless directly asked. We want to see how humans approach problems when given unlimited resources, but no preconceived solutions. Chen studied the command center, noting the familiar layout despite its alien technology. Someone had clearly designed this to be comfortable for human use. What's the scenario? 3 months ago, one of our border systems detected an anomalous energy signature approaching from unexplored space. Zephyra explained, as the main display activated to show a star system with 7 planets. It wasn't the same signature as the consuming force, but it was clearly artificial and clearly powerful. We sent our standard first contact team, diplomats, scientists, cultural specialists. The display showed elegant Valthani ships approaching what appeared to be a massive geometric structure, all smooth curves and impossible angles that hurt to look at directly. The structure responded by surrounding our ships with some kind of field that prevented them from leaving or communicating. Not hostile, just contained. Our rescue missions found the same thing. Every ship we sent was gently but firmly trapped. For 3 months we've tried everything our protocols suggest. Diplomatic overtures, scientific analysis, technological solutions, even offers of trade and cultural exchange. Nothing worked. The structure acknowledges our communications but doesn't respond to them. It just keeps our people safe and contained while apparently studying them. Chen felt the familiar sensation of a puzzle clicking into place in his mind. How many ships are trapped? 17 vessels with a total crew of 412 individuals. And they're unharmed? Completely unharmed. The structure provides everything they need for survival and even comfort. But they cannot leave and we cannot reach them. Sergeant Riley stepped forward, her tactical training engaging with the problem. What have your rescue attempts involved? Standard protocols, replied Lyra, who had been quietly observing from the side of the chamber. Graduated response from passive observation to active intervention. We've tried communication arrays, scientific probe missions, diplomatic negotiation ships, and finally direct rescue operations using our most advanced technology. Chen exchanged glances with his team, seeing the same recognition in their eyes that he felt in his gut. The aliens had approached this like a bureaucracy, methodical, careful, following established procedures. But bureaucracies solved bureaucratic problems. This needed something else. Time limit? Chen asked. You have 48 hours to develop and implement a solution, Zephyra replied. If you succeed, we will know that humans can indeed share the endless spirit with others. If you fail, we will still honor our agreement to return your colonists safely, but we will know that humanity cannot help us with our greater challenge. Chen looked around the command center, then at his team, then at the alien queen who was offering them a chance to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. We'll need to talk to your trapped people first, he said, and we'll need complete access to all your previous attempt records. And coffee. Do you have anything like coffee? For the first time since they'd met her, Queen Zephyra laughed, a sound like silver bells mixed with distant thunder. I believe we can arrange something suitable. Welcome to the test, Captain Chen. Show us how humans solve impossible problems. Chen's team had been awake for 36 hours straight, and the command center looked like a hurricane had torn through a library. Holographic displays floated at every conceivable angle, showing communication logs, energy pattern analyses, and 3-dimensional models of the mysterious structure that held 400 Valthani captive. Empty cups of something that tasted almost like coffee littered every surface, alongside half-eaten plates of alien food that actually wasn't terrible. "Captain, I think we've been looking at this completely wrong," announced Private Jackson from where he sat surrounded by communication equipment, his young face showing the intense concentration that had made him their best signals expert. Every approach the Valthani tried followed the same basic pattern. They identified the structure as artificial intelligence, then tried to communicate with it like it was a person. Sergeant Riley looked up from her analysis of the rescue attempt records, rubbing her tired eyes. But what if it's not trying to communicate? What if it's trying to learn? Chen felt that familiar electric sensation when pieces of a puzzle started falling into place. "Explain that." "Look at the pattern," Riley continued, gesturing to the tactical displays showing the 17 trapped ships. "It doesn't capture ships randomly. Every vessel it's taken has had different crew compositions, different technologies, different mission profiles. It's like it's collecting samples." Dr. Varen, the Valthani scientist assigned to assist them, tilted his head in the gesture Chen had learned indicated confusion, but it responds to communications. It acknowledges our attempts to contact it. "Yeah, but it doesn't answer them," countered Lieutenant Torres from her position at the scanning station. "It just sends back acknowledgement signals, like an automated system confirming receipt." Private Martinez, who'd been quietly studying the energy readings for hours, suddenly stood up with excitement. "That's it. It's not an artificial intelligence, it's an artificial research station. Look at these energy patterns. They're not consistent with a thinking machine. They're consistent with a very sophisticated scanning and analysis system." Chen moved to the central display, his mind racing through implications. "So we're not dealing with a hostile force or even a conscious entity. We're dealing with something like an unmanned space probe, but on a massive scale. A probe that's been programmed to study intelligent life," added Jackson, his fingers flying over his communication equipment. "And it's holding onto the ships because it hasn't finished its research yet." Dr. Varen's crystalline ornaments chimed softly, indicating extreme interest. "But if that's true, why haven't our analysis teams reached the same conclusion?" Chen almost smiled. This was exactly the kind of question that highlighted the difference Zephyra had been talking about. Because you approached it as a contact scenario. You assumed intelligence and tried to negotiate. We approached it as a puzzle to solve. The next 12 hours were a whirlwind of activity, as Chen's team worked with their Valthani colleagues to test their new hypothesis. They analyzed the structure's behavior patterns, studied its response times, and mapped its scanning activities. Every piece of data supported their theory. "It's definitely a research probe," Torres reported as dawn broke over their second day of effort. "But it's old. Really old. The technology is so advanced we can't even identify half of what it's doing. But the programming patterns suggest it's been operating autonomously for thousands of years." "The question is," Chen mused, staring at the three-dimensional model of the structure, "how do we convince it that it's learned everything it's going to learn from the trapped ships?" "Maybe we don't," suggested Private Martinez with the kind of lateral thinking that had gotten him through engineering school. "Maybe we give it something more interesting to study." Riley caught on immediately. "A voluntary research subject. Someone who wants to be studied." Dr. Varen's ornaments chimed in alarm. "That would be extraordinarily dangerous. We don't know what kind of procedures it might attempt, but we do know it hasn't harmed anyone in 3 months," Chen pointed out. "And if our theory is correct, it's just trying to understand how different species think and function. We could probably learn as much from it as it learns from us." What followed was 6 hours of intense planning. Chen's team worked with Valthani engineers to design a small ship that could approach the structure carrying volunteer researchers, equipped with every recording and communication device they could fit aboard. But more importantly, it would carry a complete database of human knowledge, art, science, philosophy, history, music, literature. The idea is to overwhelm its curiosity, Chen explained to Queen Zephyra as they prepared for the mission. Give it so much interesting data that it gets distracted from its current research subjects, like offering a child a new toy to get them to put down something dangerous. Zephyra studied the mission plan with obvious fascination. "And you believe this will work because?" "Because humans are naturally curious," Chen replied with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "And we're betting that something designed to study intelligent life shares that trait. When we encounter something more interesting than what we're currently doing, We drop everything to investigate it. The volunteer research ship was crewed by Dr. Sarah Wong and two Valthani scientists who'd embraced the human approach to problem-solving. As their vessel approached the structure, Chen's team monitored from the command center, ready to implement backup plans if their theory proved wrong. "The structure is responding," reported Jackson, his voice tense with excitement. "It's extending scanning beams toward the research ship, but wait. The beams it's using on our volunteers are different from what it's been using on the trapped ships. More sophisticated, more intense. It's definitely interested," added Torres. "Energy readings are spiking across the entire structure. Whatever that thing is thinking, our data package has got its attention." For 6 hours, they watched as the structure apparently devoured every piece of information the research ship had brought. Mathematical principles, musical compositions, historical records, scientific theories, philosophical debates, artistic expressions. Humanity's entire accumulated knowledge flowed into the ancient probe's analysis systems. Then something unprecedented happened. The structure began transmitting back. "Captain, we're receiving a data stream," Jackson announced with barely controlled excitement. "It's massive. Detailed scans of stellar formations, analysis of extinct civilizations, records of species we've never encountered. It's sharing its research with us." Dr. Varen's ornaments were chiming so rapidly they sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "This is impossible. The probe has been completely non-responsive to information sharing attempts." "Not non-responsive," Chen corrected with a growing grin. "Just uninterested. We finally offered it something it considered worth trading for." The breakthrough came 12 hours later when the structure suddenly released all 17 trapped ships simultaneously. But more than that, it transmitted detailed analysis reports about each crew's species characteristics, technological capabilities, and cultural patterns. Information that would take decades of study to compile. It wasn't holding them hostage, Sarah Wong reported from the research ship as the freed vessels regrouped around them. It was just really thorough in its research methods. Like a scientist who gets so absorbed in an experiment that they forget about everything else. Queen Zafira stood beside Chen in the command center, watching as the freed ships safely returned to Valtani space. The ancient probe had already begun moving away, apparently satisfied with its research and eager to find new subjects to study. 48 hours ago, this situation was classified as impossible to resolve, she said quietly. "Our best minds had exhausted every option they could conceive. And your people solved it by asking a single question we never thought to ask." "What was that?" Chen asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "What if we're wrong about what we're dealing with?" Zephyra turned to face him, her expression holding something that might have been wonder. "That is the endless spirit, isn't it? The refusal to accept that any problem is truly impossible to solve." Chen nodded, feeling a strange mixture of pride and humility. "We just look at things differently. Sometimes that makes all the difference." "Indeed it does, Captain Chen." Zephyra moved closer and Chen realized that something fundamental had shifted in how she looked at him and his species. "Indeed it does." The heart chamber had been transformed for the ceremony. Where before it had been a simple sphere with a crystal throne, it now bloomed with representatives from dozens of species throughout the Valthani Empire. Crystalline beings who sang in mathematical harmonies floated near the ceiling, while plant-like entities with flowers for faces stood rooted in specially prepared soil. The air hummed with conversation in 100 different languages, all somehow translated into Chen's mind through the ship's consciousness. Chen stood with his team and the rescued colonists, all wearing their dress uniforms for what Queen Zafira had called the most important diplomatic ceremony in galactic history. Dr. Sarah Wong kept fidgeting with her formal collar, clearly uncomfortable in anything that wasn't practical work clothing, while Engineer Bradley looked around with the appreciation of someone seeing master craftsmanship in action. "I still can't believe we're here," whispered Private Jackson to Lieutenant Torres. 3 days ago we were just investigating a missing colony. Now we're apparently about to become founding members of some kind of galactic alliance." Torres smiled at the young soldier's wonderment. "Welcome to serving with Captain Chen. Things have a tendency to get complicated around him." Queen Zephyra entered the chamber with a presence that immediately drew every being's attention. But she wasn't alone. Flanking her were individuals who clearly represented the highest levels of the Valthani government, beings whose ornamental crystals chimed with such complex harmonies that they created music, simply by standing near each other. Honored. Representatives, Zephyra began, her mental voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Today we witness the formal establishment of something that has never existed before, a true alliance between the Vilthani Empire and humanity. The assembled delegates responded with various species-specific expressions of interest and approval. The crystalline beings brightened, the plant entities rustled their flower faces, and several others made sounds that ranged from melodic to completely alien. But this is more than a simple treaty, Zephyra continued, moving to stand beside Chen at the chamber's center. This is the beginning of the Catalyst Project, our attempt to solve the crisis threatening the galactic core by combining Vilthani resources with human innovation. She gestured, and the chamber's walls displayed the now familiar image of dying space at the galaxy's edge. But this time the image included new data, analysis from the ancient probe they'd encountered, combined with observations from other sources throughout Vilthani space. The probe shared information about similar consuming forces in other galaxies, explained Dr. Varen, who had become something of a liaison between human and Vilthani scientific communities. The pattern is consistent across multiple galactic structures. This is not unique to our location, but neither is resistance to it, added Dr. Wong, stepping forward with the confidence she'd gained from working with alien technology. The probe's data includes records of civilizations that successfully defended against similar threats. The common factor among survivors isn't advanced technology or superior firepower. She paused for dramatic effect, a habit she'd picked up from briefing human administrators but which seemed to work equally well on aliens. It's adaptability, the ability to change fundamental approaches when existing methods fail. The willingness to try solutions that seem impossible or ridiculous. The refusal to accept defeat as final. Chen watched as this information rippled through the assembled delegates. He'd learned enough about galactic politics to recognize that several species were recognizing their own limitations in her description. The Catalyst Project will establish joint research stations throughout the galaxy, Zephyra announced. Each station will pair human teams with representatives from multiple species. Humans will lead problem-solving efforts while their colleagues provide technological resources and specialized knowledge. But this isn't charity, Chen interjected, knowing it was important for everyone to understand humanity's perspective. We're not here to be anyone's saviors or to solve everyone's problems for them. We're here to share what we call the endless spirit, the belief that every problem has a solution waiting to be discovered. An entity that looked like living liquid crystal formed itself into a speaking posture. How can you guarantee that human methods will work on a threat that has consumed hundreds of star systems? Chen smiled, recognizing the kind of logical challenge that had probably dominated Vilthani thinking for millennia. We can't guarantee anything except that we'll keep trying new approaches until we find one that works. That's what humans do. We fail forward until we succeed. The beauty of the endless spirit, added Sergeant Riley, surprising everyone including herself by speaking to the Galactic Assembly, is that it's contagious. Working with humans changes how you think about problems. We've already seen it happening with your people. Dr. Varen chimed his agreement. Human approaches have revolutionized our understanding of 17 different research projects in just the past week. They ask questions we never considered because the questions seemed irrelevant or impossible to answer. Queen Zephyra moved closer to Chen, and he felt the chamber's attention focus on them both. Captain Chen, on behalf of the Vilthani Empire and our allied species, I formally invite humanity to join us in exploring the galaxy, not as subjects or vassals, but as partners in the greatest adventure any civilization can undertake. She paused, and her next words carried emotional weight that resonated through every mind in the chamber. But more than that, I invite you to help us remember what we've forgotten, that the universe is vast and full of wonders, that every challenge is an opportunity for growth, and that no problem is too great for beings who refuse to accept the impossible. Chen felt the weight of representing his entire species in this moment. Behind him, his team and the colonists stood ready to support whatever decision he made. Around him, representatives of advanced civilizations waited to see how humanity would respond to an offer that would change their place in the galaxy forever. Your Majesty, Chen replied, his voice carrying clearly through both sound and the mental connection that had become natural to him. Humanity accepts your invitation, but we have one condition. Silence fell over the chamber like a held breath. This partnership has to work both ways. Humans aren't the only species with the endless spirit. Every intelligent race has the capacity for growth, innovation, and the refusal to accept defeat. Our job isn't to solve your problems for you, it's to help you remember how to solve them yourselves. The silence stretched for several heartbeats before Queen Zephyra began to laugh that sound like silver bells and distant thunder that Chen had come to associate with genuine joy. Captain Chen, she said, moving to stand directly in front of him. You have just proved beyond any doubt that we made the right choice. She reached out and took his hands in hers, and suddenly every being in the chamber could feel the moment through their shared connection. It was like touching lightning, a surge of possibility and potential that spoke of futures bright with discovery and challenge and growth. Welcome to the galaxy, humanity, Zephyra said softly, her words reaching every corner of known space through quantum communication networks. At last I've found you. And now together, we'll find what comes next. As cheers and species-specific celebrations erupted throughout the chamber, Chen looked around at aliens who were no longer quite so alien, at team members who had become pioneers for their entire species, and at a future that suddenly seemed vast with possibility. The consuming force at the galaxy's edge still waited, still threatened everything they were working to build. But for the first time in millennia, the galaxy faced that threat with something it had almost forgotten, hope fueled by the absolute certainty that no challenge was too great for beings who refused to give up. The endless spirit, it turned out, was indeed contagious, and the galaxy would never be the same.